Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 101 Show Euros edition, episode 3, with Tess Howard and the wonderful Andy Bradshaw. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tess. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. The sun is shining in Sheffield, so the world is a wonderful place.
Big up to Sheffield, wherever you are. Andy, well, we go way back to under 18s when I think you gave me the unfortunate or fortunate name of the Tessinator. But you were my chief defensive coach for under 18 England, and you were previously under 21 England men's coach, was it GB? Sorry, GB development.
Yeah, sort of flitted around all over. Mainly under 18 girls, did a bit under 21 women, and then way back when, under 16s, a bit of under 18s boys, mainly under 16s.
And now you work with UK coaching, is that right?
Yeah, work for UK coaching, mainly around developing coach developers, so those that support other coaches, but across lots of different sports. So get to steal some good ideas from some other great coaches, which is always nice. Just enjoy supporting others. So it's a dream job, really. It's good.
Awesome. So it's been quite a couple of days since we last were on the show, and the men's pools are officially finished, and we have our semi-finalists. So this is what it looks like at the moment. We've Netherlands Wales is just concluded, so it's not completely up to date, but we see there Pool A, England and Belgium going through. How good is that for England, Andy?
Well, I mean, I think when you were saying about what predictions might be, the fact that they're top in the group, playing with a great deal of confidence and with a whole lot of momentum going into a semi-final is fantastic. It's all you could have wanted for, really. Scoring some really good goals, defending well, defending resolutely, some great goalkeeping action as well from Ollie in goal. So I think it bodes well for hopefully a really exciting semi-final and possibly a final.
Yeah, honestly, I think the confidence, like you said, the way they're playing, they've got so many goal-scoring threats, which is just so exciting to see, like Chris Griffiths, Phil Roper, Zach and Ansel. And you coached quite a few of them back in the day, did you?
Yeah, I'm not claiming any responsibility for progress here at all. But yeah, a few of the lads came through Sheffield when they were up in the Premier Division last time. So Salisbury, Ansel, Creed, Roper and Gooders were all part of the team at some point then. But also going way back, a few of those came through the under-16 age group that I was involved with. So it's really nice. I mean, that's one of the nice things about working in a talent pathway is when players come through, like yourself. You hope that you might have passed something on that's either been remembered or has been useful. But yeah, it's really nice to see when players that you have worked with, you've hopefully influenced a little bit, go through and start to realise their dreams. So it's brilliant that those players are playing, and even on the girls' side, on the women's side of the programme, someone like Catherine Ledesma coming in and scoring on debut. I mean, that's fantastic to see players like that coming through and being able to cope. Yeah. And Crackle's behind her. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And as having played with a lot of those players as well, all of them, yeah, it's so nice to watch. So this men's, who would you? So I believe Netherlands have actually topped the Pool B. So England will be crossing over with Germany. Are you upset that they're not crossing over with France, given the score line?
Well, I mean, that's what we were talking about before we came on. I mean, I wouldn't have, if we were to try and get a date for when the last time Germany conceded 5 against France. I wonder. There are no easy games when you get to a semi-final. Clearly, that they're all very, very good teams. But is there more of an opportunity against a German side who do appear to be leaking a few goals? But I mean, I think when you get to this point, you've got to be looking at what you're doing, and the fact that the England men are playing so well. They'll be going into that game thinking if we do our jobs right, we've got every chance of winning. So
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to touch on the men later, the England men later in the show. But I would like to start the first clip. I think, Andy, it's got to be something about distribution at the back, because it seems to me at the moment the role of the defenders, we call them defenders, but I like to call them the outletters, the vision, the playmakers at the back, so that people can understand the role that they play in goal creation. And there was one that we talked about earlier. Divine, the Dutch fullback, played this wonderful pass. So let's
This is the
bring it up.
standout moment in the game so far. Prowser with his eyes up. Brinkman waiting for
This pass is just incredible. Talk us through what's going on here.
Well, I mean, I think the first point would be where he is on the pitch. So he's inside his own 25. He's under a fair amount of pressure here. Well, a fair amount. He's under some pressure from the Belgians. And the score's 1-0 at this point to the Dutch, I think midway through the third quarter. So there's a little bit to have it. Obviously, you can't see the other end of the pitch, but where the ball ends up going to, quite often we'll talk about stretch in games of hockey. And where we can get our forwards to still provide an outletting threat, over quite some distance. So when the ball comes through, you'll start to see, well, actually, there was a whole lot of stretch here. So the Dutch are playing over quite a long distance. But what's interesting for me here is, the ability to hit what I would describe as a sort of an in-out hit. So he's hitting from left to right on the diagonal. And because the Belgian player is actually relatively close to him, if he was to try and, I would say, if he was to try and play that as a sort of a disguised sweep pass, he may not have the time to be able to do that because of the distance of that Belgian player. So he elects to hit the ball. And that is, for me, I used to play in that position, not to say I used to perform anything like this, clearly. But that is one of the things. It's sort of like a bit of an off drive in cricket, to be able to play that left to right hit ball. You're sort of pushing your hands a little further through it, and he hits, what ends up being probably a 50-yard pass. Absolutely, it's through the eye of a needle a little bit, because I think when I initially watched the clip, it's like, why hasn't that Belgian guy intercepted it? But when you see it from behind the goal from the other side, it's just not in his reach. So it's pinpoint, and there you've got the stretch from the two Dutch forwards. So what you're able, that encapsulating what that skill gives you, being able to see the pass, so see beyond the pressure that's coming to him, I think, which is really quite an interesting one. So as he's looking there, as that Belgian player is advancing towards him, yes, I'm sure he notices that pressure, but he's still able to scan 50 yards down the pitch and then execute what is a pretty difficult skill and be able to play the ball, as I say, right onto that stick there, meaning that we've travelled, 50 yards. We're in behind the German defence, and one more pass and we've scored. And it's just, I think it's highlighted when I did my little bit of, he's described sort of like the enforcer around the back for the Dutch side, but actually, the flair, the ability, he clearly is a very good defender, but actually that is as exciting a skill and as a penetrating a skill and sets a goal up just as much as, Zach's drive down the right-hand side for the goal against Belgium for us a couple of days ago. And, it's different skills, different parts of the pitch, but I think there's so much to explore with that. And also just, that range of passing ability. So being able to slap the ball with disguise, being able to hit the ball, inside out, outside in, being able to throw, long and short aerials. That's where that sort of fullback play, and particularly when I remember back to times when we're watching Futures Cup or, you're selecting age group hockey, you'd be looking at fullbacks that, do they have that range? Do they have the ability to play long and short and in a variety of different ways? and still be able to hit the ball, because sometimes that feels like it's a bit of a lost skill. And, you know, you clearly see there that that was exactly the right skill to use at that, or technique to use at that particular time to execute what that pass.
Yeah, I think passing range is such a huge thing, and this is a important clip to show, to highlight that it happens in both men's and women's games. And it's what I love in this clip. This is the Dutch against Spain. Is you see two completely different types of passing, but you've got a defender to midfield aerial, and then you've got the slap from Eva de Hood. So here we have the aerial in to Ava, and she sees that. Not sure why the camera pans there, but we'll see. Watch it on replay. But I
think it's just to highlight Lockie's amazing beard, to be fair, which is
the commentators do seem to love it. Yeah, for me, this is the ultimate forwards dream pass. So you've got. Yeah, I mean, the aerial rule means that Ava is in space, but she's been her space is reduced because of that Spanish. But instead of, I don't know, trying to look for a 2v1 round here, she sees the gap. And like you said about getting the height of the forward, you see Matla, she wasn't initially probably the highest forward, but she's led on the inside because she sees the opportunity. What do you make of this technique?
Well, I mean, I think if actually you go back to where she's just about to play the slap. Sorry, you had it a second ago. Once the aerial goes in, you see the run being made from. So she starts just outside the 25. So she's top right hand.
Oh yeah, there she is.
And I think, I mean, this is where you look at connections and players being able to sort of read ahead of what's going to happen. I think, she's starting to look at, right, this player has the ability to make that pass. She'll be looking for me on the inside here. She'll be looking to make that really penetrative pass. So that will come through, all of the work that the Dutch side or any other side that are looking to try and make that type of pass happen is, right, now the ball's down, they're going to be looking forwards here. So it's that intent to play, like looking first, forward first. That real intent to how can we make the most penetrative pass, and it's not always going to come off. But in a game like this, where you play a pass that ends up being a pretty sort of worldy type pass in behind there, for someone making that run, expecting it to come, that's where it ends up being something that looks so good.
And the funny thing is I remember being at Lilleschall and you asking us as forwards to do S-shaped leads. And we had no idea why you would want to do an S-shape lead, because you'd put out cones for us to trial this. And you look at someone like Sophie Bray, who S-shape is her style of lead, because you bring the defender one way and then you can get into their blind spot. And although this isn't a strict S-shape, she's done sort of a curve to get in behind the defender. And then to have this finish when it comes on replay. And the trap as well, for me, that's where the goal's made, because I think the commentators in this instance were also saying that the Spanish had quite a few opportunities like this, but they just didn't quite make the trap. So it just highlights again the importance of being able to trap upright slap, because that was a bobbly pass. I mean, you could say it was purposeful so that people didn't get touches on it, but you still have to trap it. Yeah,
and that's, you're looking at exceptional quality players being able to do the basics very, very well. So, she's made that run in behind. She's hoping that the ball comes in here. Then becomes her responsibility. If she gets a trap on that, there is a real outstanding goal scoring chance. And I think that's where, sometimes, that ball might get played at a slightly lower standard. And it's like, you get the sort of oohs and ahs, well, that's unlucky when the player doesn't trap it. It's like, well, that's where we need to build that type of work into our practice and into our training. So running at pace, I mean, that's probably the thing that puts the level of difficulty up, is the speed that she's having to run at to get in behind the Spanish defender and then trap it on the move, which sort of links to, I'm sure something we'll chat about later, is, the ability to do basics well at exceptionally high pace. So, the clip that I'm sure we'll look at when Zach goes around the back and then plays the ball to Liam, he's running very, very quickly with the ball, which makes it difficult for defenders, but he also executes the pass at the end of it very well. And this is, what sets out the real true world-class players from everybody else, their ability to perform a basic skill like a reverse stick upright trap, but at a ball that's coming not entirely flat when she's running pretty flat out as well.
Yeah, let's have a look at
It's away though, start
now,
of this third quarter, second half.
So just before this, whilst it loads properly, this was the England 2 Belgium 1 game, and Zach was made a player of the match, rightly so. And this goal comes literally in the first minute of the second half, straight from pushback, which I just kept having to watch because this is the ideal start to a second quarter. Right, here we go.
England will take this away though, start of this third quarter, second half. Scoreline reading 1 goal apiece. 2 penalty strokes, 1 for either side from penalty corners, which both sides created a foul against their opponents. Got about 14 corners between them so far to date, but with no real shots on goal. England carry the ball brilliantly across the goal. What a start!
So I deliberately got the clip from this pushback because I think the movement of the players is so interesting here. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, and I'm sure some of the people watching will have heard of the term get ahead once we pass the ball, and Zach demonstrates this really well, leading on the inside on this case, but getting ahead of the ball and continuing going so that there is a passing opportunity when it pops out to the right-hand touchline. It's by no means, a certain goal at that point. He receives the ball just outside the 25, but then carries it with so much threat as he comes into the D. I'm sure we'll come on to some of the things there, but, we will, in age group hockey, we challenge players to understand what that means like and what it feels like in terms of getting ahead. So even before he gets the ball back, he's led 30 yards at some pace, probably, picks it up midway, plays the pass here. So just outside his 25, and is working quite hard there to get ahead and make sure that the player behind him, so the winger that might have trailed with him stops. So that's where we're able to start to now the numbers game. We have a 2-on-1 immediately on that right-hand side. And that's been created by the player coming from deep and getting into that position. So it's a way of creating overload by leading from a deep position and getting ahead of the ball. But as I say, it's by no means a certain goal at this point when he gets it. So he's now, 35 yards out. Now, I know Liam's run, so Liam ends up scoring, I think is one of the other, so if you've got someone moving at pace with the ball now, it's also, a huge responsibility on the other players to be able to keep up with him. I always remember when Lily Owsley was coming through the age group stuff, it's like when she started running with the ball, it was actually really difficult for anyone else to keep up with her because she was pretty quick. Still is. Yeah. But, the see that Zach's carrying the ball now, and you see the 4 players in the picture now absolutely busting the gut to keep up and to get into the D to be able to create a goal scoring opportunity. So create passing options for Zach as he gets into the circle. It's interesting to watch the Belgian guys because he's moving so quick. I think the guy who's engaging now is thinking, well, I'm not sure I want to tackle here because I don't know how I'm going to make a clean tackle. So he ends up actually just sort of, holding out. And I'm not saying that's exceptional skill by Zach, but he's making that Belgian defender make some tough choices there because of the pace that he's running at. Ball carrying position, he's got it in a position which isn't easy to make a tackle, so he's always going to be sort of reaching across him. So there's a real danger of giving away a corner there. But just take it back a little bit. So I think it's Liam's run as he comes into the circle. So he comes in sort of inside right slot. Can you rewind it a little bit? So he's just crossing it, and he engages the Belgian defender, so the second deepest one, who's sort of not facing the ball at the moment, which is a bit of a strange one. So Liam's sort of running past him, and you might think that, well, actually, who else could you release to try and engage with Zach as he goes towards the base of the D? But I think this is the absolute thing that running with this type of pace towards the base of D is it starts to ask really serious questions of the defenders. So you've got split seconds to make decisions here because of the pace of what's happening. And this guy turns his back and tries to follow Liam, which still leaves this hole. And I think the Belgians at this point are thinking we'll cover all of the pullback options. So, they've probably got the 90-degree pass maybe covered off. They're thinking anything towards the penalty flick spot we've got covered off. Goalkeeper's probably thinking, right, well, Zach's not going to score from here. Although there have been a couple of goals that have whooshed him from this point, I know, in some of the other games, but probably not going to score here. So the fact that he pulls out this pass and then Liam finishes it, I think is what makes the goal so fantastic, because to deliver a pinpoint pass at the end of what is probably a 50-yard run flat out links back to what we were saying before, the ability to do that at high pace and be able to pass, accurately. There's probably only a very, very small window that is going to enable Liam to score there. Yeah. And he delivers it right on the money.
Yeah.
And I imagine the Belgian guys are looking around and thinking, oh, we had that covered. We'd sort of cut off all the angles, and how's that got through? But it has. He's probably picked the one little spot that it's actually going to get through there.
Yeah, I'm playing a lot of forward, and sometimes you want to jump in front, but it's really interesting that Ansel chooses to stay at the back post, because sometimes you think the ball's not going to get through if there's a defender in front of you, so you try to jump in front and then both of you miss it. But I love his patience here, nice and low, just keeping his eye on the ball. But I wonder if that pass is going to become a bit of a trend.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's something that, you wonder, the ability, this will come through work in terms of, what are our options and what are our decisions and how can we execute in these situations. It's not a chance thing that the ball might be played in the air or the ability to, go from a low position there. So if it's drilled across low and hard, Liam is probably able to get to ground and score it, or, volley it in from what ends up being about knee height, or waist height when he stands up. But that will come from, probably hours of stuff at Bisham where they're working on, right, well, what are our options when we get to base of D? And we're carrying the ball quickly into base of D. So, sometimes you might, we've certainly talked about it in the past in age group sides where, you get into this situation and forwards will almost just sort of throw the ball away. They'll just sort of pass it into an area and hope something's going to happen. Now, there are options here. You've got Sam Ward, you've got Liam. I think you've probably got another England player just out of picture there. So you've got a variety of options, and it then becomes dependent on the player picking the right option. Because you wonder if he plays it to Sam there, he might get it past the right foot of the Belgian defender in the middle of the picture. But, would you actually score from there because it's pretty congested? The tall Belgian guy might step out, just get in the way. You might win a corner or something messy comes of it. But actually, it's just going back to the point about how you train and working through, the variety of different options, execution of lifted ball. And if it's lifted, how are we going to put it in? What are the variety of techniques to do that? This isn't a chance thing. It will have been worked on, this exact scenario, but the decision making of players here, and particularly going back to that point about decision making when you're moving at extreme pace. So this pass actually looks a little bit easier when you stop it like this. It's like, just pop it past the goalkeeper's right hand. But when you see it at full pace, it's like, blimey, how's he even seen that? So, I think it's absolutely, it really highlights and enforces the point that this is a fantastic execution at the end of a brilliant team move as well.
Definitely. And speaking of teams, hello. Welcome, Gibbo. Andy, Gibbo, Andy. I know, I'm just joking, you know each other.
Gibbo, how are we doing?
Well, Andy, just been backstage admiring your analysis of Zach there with some pass.
Yeah, well, it is. And, it's nice when you can analyse stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many, what as we've been talking through, there just are so many really sort of almost foundational bits. It's lovely to see a goal where someone has led through in almost like textbook style and got the ball back, but then done a really nice baseline carry, and then you've got supporting leads through happening. You've got options in the circle, and the correct option is taken, or the one that scores. And you can review that and look at, well, that's how good it can be. And I think that's what's very exciting about the team moving through into the the qualification rounds. They're scoring goal like that. They've got real exciting players who are playing, and throughout the whole team. So even like Ollie playing a goal at the moment, making world-class saves. They've got players playing at on top form at the minute, which is really nice.
Have you covered a big positive today was the corners going in? So getting Wardy into the tournament from a flicking perspective, or getting a flicker sort of into the tournament is pretty important. Yeah,
I was just gonna bring up the
change of angles out to the top.
Didn't have a chance to get Wardy's goals, but this is the Belgium stroke that we won, and I think what you're saying, Gibbo, about having Wardy back on form, it just means that now that there are so many different threats, and I think Ansel, his goals against in the Pro League recently, and Roper, even in Dixie, but this is just for a move. This is probably the slickest thing I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
And
Phil gets it off so quick, doesn't he? He gets it off in a stride.
Yeah, it's you can't even say that it's like even a slip. Like it's so smooth. You can't even see it.
But I think the point you make is right, Tess, that having a flicker or flickers kind of in the tournament and a real goal threat makes all this other stuff easier, because they respect the direct option. It becomes easy to run these things.
Yeah, definitely.
Just a little detail, and just Tess, if you roll it back, can you go a little bit further onto the previous one where it's behind on that, and so on their number 2 runner, just the little bit that fills the little slip here behind his back, the number 4, just what it forces him to do. So he's just thinking it's being delivered here, so he just checks his stride, which gives the slip flick. It's a small amount of space, but I think as you slow things down, you look at analysis, you start to appreciate, well, that just gives you maybe a foot more space to get that flick off. And that's, it's going back to one of the reasons why you might do the movement stuff at the top of the D when you're playing at this level, just opening up a foot's worth of space for your flickers to be able to get stuff out, without the number 2 runner getting closer. That's why you do them, and that's why it needs to be as slick as it is.
So it's the selling of the first move, you're saying?
Yeah, so it needs to be. So the reason number 4 gets interested there, I think, as the ball is approached, he's thinking, well, actually, what's happening here? So he's not running. He's not running straight at where the next slip is coming from, which means that as you progress it now, he's stopped a little bit, so he's just broken his stride. He's just not got quite close enough, which means you get a cleaner flick away. And those are the sort of reasons why you do that type of move. Can you just disrupt what the opposition penalty corner defense is doing, and maybe just get them off task a little bit, whether that's dropping a stick, whether that's breaking a stride, or maybe just even getting them to think, oh, what is happening here, and just get them off task for what they're supposed to be doing.
That's really interesting to take the view of what we can do to the penalty corner defense, because I wonder if is it similar to how Belgium win their stroke.
Leupart sets himself.
All right, we'll take back.
They got this behind the goal test. It's going to be interesting to see his drag sort of path. It looks like he managed to flick that up. Yeah, there you go. He managed to get that inside the one runner. So up the right foot, the forehand side of the one runner.
So called a 3-1 here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting, because it's the responsibility of the flyer, as Andy once told me, to protect the left side of the goal here.
Absolutely. That's such a tough line of sight for Tom on the goal line as well, because that's going to Tom, that's going to look like it's coming out of the back of the flyer's stick. It's going to look really, he's going to see that late, and being the good South Yorkshire lad that he is, he doesn't show that it's hit him in the head, does he? He makes it look like he's hit it with his stick as best he can. He's tried to tough that one out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to give a little bit of credit here. I mean, on an offset Castle running from where he was running, it's a pretty good line, and you're probably talking about an inch or so, maybe even less, past his right knee, because any further across, and he's in Ollie Payne's line anyway.
Yeah.
So I think you've always got to be difficult about saying, right, well, actually, he should be, another foot across, and he'd just wear that, because, then Ollie can't see anything, and you're losing players left, right, and centre. It's a matter of small margins there. What I'm really interested in is, obviously, well, not really interested, but Ollie's offset a little bit there on the right hand side. The responsibility of the post players there to make some great plays. And we saw, I think I mentioned it to you, Tess, Amy Costello, great pick on one of the early Scotland games. Having a really good postman in those positions. Obviously, since Barry's not with the team anymore, he was exceptional in there. Saul has taken up that role and is doing some brilliant stuff. But actually, that role, we talked about fullbacks being able to play fantastic, defense splitting balls from back to front. That the ability to stop goals. I know he doesn't this time, but he will. He has done in the past, and he will do in the future. But the importance of having a fantastic postman in this type of position is crucial. Because they will save goals. Which are just as important as forward scoring at the other end.
Yeah, and by getting his head in the way, even if he didn't get it on his gloves, gives a chance. I mean, that's a certain goal if he's not there, so still gives a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent flick. I mean, that's not
fantastic.
That's not bad. That's not sort of unpick our defence too much. He's absolutely flung that one there, and actually that's it. Saul's in the position that he is to be able to get his stick up on that in quite an awkward position. Sometimes I think the higher ones are a little easier to get, or something that's sort of shin height. Actually getting your stick up to protect you, he'd have to have got his head out of the way and his stick in the way pretty damn quick there. So there's a huge credit to the flicker there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think corners has been such a key part of this whole tournament. I mean, the Ireland, we're just moving to the women's side, the Ireland Scotland game was so important for Ireland to stay in this tournament. Stay pushing for a spot. We'll look at their goal in a second, but this is what the women's lineup looks at the moment. We've got one more game to play tomorrow for each of the teams. Gibbo, what do you make?
Well, obviously the England game becomes huge after the results against Germany, so it's a win and in situation for England, which is because it's a knockout game basically now within the group, and there's no reason why they can't beat Belgium. I think Belgium have looked promising this tournament, but I'd say Germany was certainly much improved between their game against Belgium, and when they were much better when they came and played us yesterday. And I'd probably say it's as is in the Pool A. Yeah. You have to think, but yeah, I think a little bit to debate about Pool B, but yeah, it's a knockout game for England, which it's not beyond them to win it all.
Yeah, it's a big game, but having spoken to them, they seem confident going into it, which is really good to see. But yeah, back to the corners of Scotland Ireland. I mean, this is the Ireland goal. And the build up to it.
Flanagan brings it down. A bit of movement, connection with Duke.
So we've just got the timing of a tackle wrong, I think. But good play from Ireland.
Mm.
And then this is the goal. Andy, what do you make of that goal?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit scrappy, isn't it? Which I think probably is the huge disappointment from the Scottish viewpoint. I mean, in terms of when we spoke about running line here, I mean, actually, this is a pretty tight line by the number one here. And I think you'd be probably quite disappointed by the fact that the ball ends up popping out to where it does. So having run this line and got a whole lot of body and stick in the way of it, it still manages to creep its way through. And the fact that it then drops directly to who was left, the L1, is probably, it's a little unlucky. I think where I've looked at this for quite a bit. So if I was looking at, PCD in this situation, you've got number 25 who's coming across and is looking to really engage with the L1, so the girl who scores the headband. Mm-hmm. And actually, in terms of sort of disrupting that on the very first phase, she probably does a really good job. So if an L1 deflection had been played there, very unlikely she'd have got a clean hit. The challenge here, and similar to the discussion we had, when we spoke earlier today, Tess, it's not about, feedback like this is not necessarily about, identifying individuals and saying you should have done this, you should have done that. Having a look at what the number two person here would do and what a team might be able to do better at is this reaction point. So once the ball pops in behind and there's one hit at goal, I think the Scottish players could just be a little quicker collapsing into the real point of danger. And that's just, it's not, the post player actually does a pretty good job at stepping up. Number two possibly doesn't jump back in as quickly as we could do. And I'm sure Cochrane, the goalkeeper, would think if I'd have just cleared the ball, away rather than just popping it back in. But those are things that I'm sure the Scottish team would have looked at and said, actually, there's a couple of things that we could just have tightened up on. But, you're in scramble defence at the moment, and that's where absolutely people just need to be collapsing into the point of danger, getting, so could you have perhaps just got around and made that messier so that, one of the things like, we'll give away another corner, just get something in the way of it. It's really untidy now. But once she's had one shot, I think the disappointment is that it comes straight back in and, you enable her to just get a second chance at that. Gibbo?
Yeah, the phase that Scotland can probably positively influence the most is the one after the first shot here. So once this is saved, that's sort of where Ireland, you would say, win the battle a little bit because they're more alert, more ready to score. Yeah, there's the fine margins of getting to the ball first, I suppose. But up to that point, and it's not an easy message for players, but it's just a lot of bad luck. Like you've run a really good line and the ball's ballooned behind you to an attacker in the middle of the D. It's sometimes there is no justice in PCD.
Yeah, that's how it kind of felt in the England game yesterday with their the first game, it just kind of fell straight exactly where the Germans really wanted it. So this is the first goal.
First penalty corner. Long drag. Oh, and it beats Hinch down.
It's just such a mess. So many chances to clear, but then also it's all up in the air. Maddie didn't like.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you've got to look at the fact that once it slightly breaks down to the right hand side, here we get great pressure. So you know, you'd be absolutely saying, right, someone's got to get out there. Someone's got to get out and put pressure on the shot, which we do really well. You know, and really brave to get in on the reverse stick and get something on that to stop that ball going in on goal. But you know, the unfortunate bit is that deflects straight to someone's open stick, you know, in the middle of the goal, and then it becomes really, really difficult to defend against.
It's a numbers game. With that corner, it's an 8-4 overload until the halfway line players get back, and the chances are it's going to go to a German stick over an England stick at this point, isn't it? There's 8 Germans in the circle at this point versus 4. It's very, and that's good pressure, contesting the shot. You'd probably say the right players have been marked there as well. And it's the break of a ball with an overload in the circle because the halfway line players aren't quite back in yet.
Yeah, I didn't actually think of it in that way. It's just a numbers game, but yeah, it's
because I think when is it Anna Toman contesting that shot? If you pause it there, I'd say all the right. If you had to pick the players to mark based on what the player on the ball is doing, I think they've made great decisions. Like, is that Ansley there marking the player that could get the deflection in front of Maddie? The one in front of that is probably going to be the first rebounder. The one to the left, it's very hard deflection. The one at the back post, if it gets through to them, that's the gamble you take. But I think the views the 4 players in the circle really well to try and organise against that threat. But again, it is a numbers game.
Yeah, I mean, the likelihood is you've got to disrupt the potential deflectors in front of Maddie if she's shooting from that, you know, that inside right slot, which they do really well. You know, if someone had randomly jumped out of that and said, right, I'm going to go and mark the person towards the top of the circle, because I think it might just bounce out there. It's like, you know, tell me why you think that's going to happen, because it's, you know, you can't predict that situation there.
Yeah. The right to leave the 2 on the left of the screen as you look at it. And if it goes through to the player on the back post, well, it goes through to the player on the back post, but you probably put something on Maddie being able to get a toe to something that goes there. So based on what's happening, you wouldn't change much, would you? No. At this stage?
Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes things just happen,
and particularly it comes back to the point I made about the Scottish-Irish corner. You know, once a corner breaks down like that and the ball starts pinging around, it's scramble defense with a huge overload. So you're having to make some pretty tough calls about where do we think the ball might go and who do we think are the priority players there, which is really difficult to do, you know, in a very short space of time. So, you know, more often than not, again, you'll collapse into the space where you think is the most danger rather than spread out and, you know, and leave huge spaces for either deflections to go through or for that, you know, the hitter, you know, the player who's on the ball to have more time to be able to pick a pass. And I think that's, you know, again, with the benefit of slowing things down and starting to pick things apart, you know, you might just have gone one step right there. Actually, when it's bouncing around in a circle like that, I think we've really got to, you know, have a little bit of empathy with the players to say, right, well, you know, there's some, you know, we're trying to make decisions really, really quickly here in a pressurized scenario. And they've actually made some pretty good ones there. And unfortunately, the ball has popped out to somewhere relatively random, which, you know, it is very unpredictable, and you wouldn't have covered it off.
Yeah, totally agree. And I guess we'll finish the show with this. England's probably their best chance against against Germany ends up with Lily Ousley having a shot. But it just shows that what we probably can expect against Belgium tomorrow, which is this ability to transfer the ball at such pace. You saw that against Italy, and being able to stretch the pitch. Got Crofty playing a great little lifted ball in there, and just kind of unlucky, or potentially could have gone for a back space. I don't know. What do you think, Gobo?
It's a really dynamic high line, to be fair, Tess. So it's amazing what a little bit of tempo can create. Just 2 crisp forehand passes. Giselle gets to be a bit more aggressive with the receipt and commit. Probably a couple of German defenders just with that receipt forward. Creates a little 2v1 on the outside, which is great. But sounds simple and boring, but just outlet speed across the back line, high transfer speed creates the chance, creates the 2v1. And getting the ball down into this relatively quickly. You never feel that the German defence is set and comfortable and marked. So it's a really good high line. And yeah, how does Lily finish it? Does she sort of go to a backhand and flick it?
Yeah.
I think she does the right thing, staying stick on ball, given where the German defender is. And
yeah, lots of pressure on her.
Lots of pressure, yeah. Couldn't get around to a forehand. She'd probably be going too far away from goal, going to a forehand, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I like the receipt as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking earlier, could she go back to Towner potentially? But then she'll have 2 German players coming at her. So I think Lil, yeah, right, does.
Is it even better if rebound pressure? I don't know, but where it goes, it's sort of we go straight back to where it came from. On the German defender's side, so you could possibly say like the players nearest the goalkeeper get in front of the German players when the save's made. That'd be good. Put more pressure on the save, perhaps.
Andy, you must like this from your fullbacks.
Yeah, Gibbo pointed out. I mean, getting into that sort of advanced back 3, back 5 shape, and then getting the lead out. So you see the lead just exiting the screen on the left-hand side there, and then the body shape of receipt.
Yeah.
So as we're leading out there, we're turning so that we're receiving as we're going into the circle. Again, for sort of younger players, that would be, real key point from that. Sometimes we would make that lead and then receive the ball and then carry on out towards the touchline and then recycle back and lose the opportunity to get into the circle there. It's just something as simple as just hooking that run as you make the lead out, receiving on the forehand, which makes the circle entry and which makes the chance happen. But it's getting into that wide, bold back 5 shape and getting some good wide wide leads happening. And I suppose, also just on the goal scoring stuff. Okay, so the ball doesn't go in from Lily's reverse flick, but what it is demonstrating is again just that. The range of goal scoring options. So yes, she might have gone onto the floor on our open stick, but actually I think there was a little bit of German pressure on that forehand side and she was going away from goal there. So, she has that in her repertoire. And, again, for any younger player watching this, it's like, well, how can I get a ball on goal from here? What are the range of different ways? And actually that might have been the best choice. Okay, it didn't go in this situation, but it might have come up off the goalkeeper. You win a corner. It might have gone in a different situation. And I think it's just highlighting the fact that how do we get something in on goal from this position where you're tightly marked? You're under pretty fierce pressure here. We can still get a shot away on.
Yeah, absolutely. The only even better is if you just get ball and goal side and on the rebounding and maybe put more pressure on the save. And maybe get a corner out of the save, maybe. But it's such a good build-up and shot generation from Lily's really positive as well.
Yeah, it's that's one of my favourite clips from the game. But yeah, what we've got tomorrow, Germany, Italy. Probably expect Germany to win that, and then Belgium, England for that Pool B, and it will be winner takes all really. So very exciting to watch. 4:00 UK time tomorrow.
Yep.
All right, to finish off this fantastic analysis from Andy. Andy, who is your England player to watch, both men and women?
Well, I think I might going to go 2 for the men, because I think, I mean, it's. I'm sure I'll be stealing other people, but Zach obviously is playing very well. You know, you'd have to say that the creativity that he's offering from deep positions. It's great that you can have, and that's it's interesting. For some reason, I watched the "No One Wants to Be a Right Back When You Grow Up" clip from Sky Sports. Yeah. It was Jamie Carragher talking to Gary Neville, but sometimes your right or left halves, it's like, well, are they the less interesting positions? But you see there that you can have real influence on the game, create chances, exceptionally skillful and creative in what might be perceived in some formations or in some circles as not the most interesting of positions. So he's making that his own. But I think from some of the saves made today, Ollie Payne in goal is on the top of his form at the minute, and going into the business end of a tournament, having a goalkeeper on top form is really, really important.
Fantastic. And you, Gibbo?
I'm like I've said Zach on the last show, and I feel like I'm becoming the president of his burgeoning fan club, to be fair. But I completely agree with Andy that actually him in the halfback line is exciting, because it looks like he's an influential player, he's creative, but from halfback he's getting a lot of touches, and I'm not tracking it, but I'd guess more minutes than if he was in the high midfield line. So he's actually having a really good chance to have an impact on the game. I think Liam's having an exciting tournament as well, to be fair. And yeah, I think he's fun to watch. On the ladies' side, I said Izzy last time, but one to watch for the next game. I promise it's not a love for loving, but I think Ellie Ray is having a solid tournament, actually, across the board. I thought she took a goal really well in the first game, and she's just popping up in good positions, giving us a lot of forward momentum. So probably go with Raya. One for the next game.
Fantastic. Andy, you got a women's player to watch?
Yeah, I think it's I would maybe I'm just playing to type here, but we're going to have to be solid defensively tomorrow. So an exceptional game from Maddie and Holly, in front of her. I think dominating at the back and providing a platform, and I think that's where maybe just linking back to that previous clip where we get a good outletting platform and we're playing higher up the pitch and we're able to start to put Belgium under a little bit more pressure and start to actually control possession. I think that will be key to starting to again rebuild some momentum. It's a different situation that the women find themselves in. Men are flying, and all things are working for them. Coming off the back of the defeat against Germany, the women will have to pick themselves up and re-establish a little bit of momentum, which I think they definitely can do. But I think having a solid base and getting, our key influential players really providing that platform, I think will enable the rest of the team to start to really work well.
Yeah.
That's just basically me saying that defenders are key in everything, basically, which is me just to
I think they are. I think keeping Amber Ballingame quiet would be quite an important thing. She looks like she's having a really fine tournament for Belgium.
Yeah, there are definitely some Belgium threats that we are well used to, so hopefully we will nullify that. So that's 4:00 tomorrow, everyone, and the semi-finals for the men kick off on Thursday. So we're back tomorrow night for the final instalment of the Euros edition to talk about the women's pools and the semi-finals to come. So thank you so much to Andy for your time, and to Gibbo also. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I will definitely be thinking about those corners and empathizing with everyone running one, because the bruises hurt when it hits, that's for sure. Anyway, thanks very much everyone for listening, and goodbye.